Welcome to Now College, where we talk about the college experience. I'm your host, Amma, and I want to thank you all for listening, and I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So before we get started, can you tell everyone your name, what your major was, and what you do now for a living?
Okay, so my name is Summer Carter Barnes. College, I initially was a biology major. I then changed to health science with an option in community health. And I am currently working on a bachelor's in healthcare administration.
So you started off as a biology major.
Yes, ma'am.
And you changed to
Health science.
health science.
Yes.
What happened?
What happened was I thought I wanted to be an OBGYN. And looking back, I feel like not only did I not have a passion for it, but I didn't really have the proper mentors to help me along the pre-med path. Those of you who work in the medical field know that is a very challenging path. And when I would go to class and see my peers and just how much joy they had in lecture and lab and all of that, I was like, I want to be excited about my education. I want to be excited about what I'm studying, what I'm learning. And I was just not enthused.
This was your freshman year?
I carried on with this debacle for 3 years. There were a lot of tears in all of my science classes and all of these different things. And I think my mom was definitely pressuring me to continue forward. But I was like, this is not the path. And I remember I was telling her, some of my friends graduated in like 3 years because they were doing other programs. And I remember a friend of mine was studying criminal justice and she got her bachelor's in 3 years. And my mom could not understand why I could not get my science degree in 3 years. But I knew I wanted to help people and still remain in the healthcare field. And I felt like health science was broad enough that even if I didn't know what I wanted to do, I could pretty much fall anywhere within the healthcare realm.
Kind of want to take it back a little bit. When you mentioned about proper guidance, who were you talking about?
Well, I am the first person in my family to go to college, and I was a part of a college prep program. And I remember we were talking about statistics, and one of my teachers in high school was saying that, I don't think she was directing it at us, but she was just giving the stats of like people who start college versus people who finish, et cetera, et cetera. And I never told anyone, but in my own mind, I felt like I was going to be a statistic. Like I had that imposter syndrome. And of course, I didn't have the term at that time. I now know what that means, but I felt that. I didn't develop any relationships with professors. I just went to class, did my homework, took my exams, that kind of thing. I was very social outside of class, but I guess maybe at the time I didn't really know how to like build a rapport with staff and faculty. So no one really knew me.
What about your advisors?
Same thing. Like I don't know them. I can't tell you what their names were or anything. I looked at the university catalog and was like, okay, this is the major that I have. These are the classes that I need to graduate. And every time when the time rolled around to enroll in courses, I'm just checking things off the list. Yeah. Like I'm not talking to anyone. And I guess I had the mindset of like, okay, I'm in school. I'm going to take these classes and then I'm just going to continue on with whatever I'm doing. No one does life alone. And I learned that in school. Like, that support system. And I don't necessarily blame anyone. I just think that I didn't know what I was doing.
Were you like this in high school? Kind of like just going to class, doing the work. You didn't really see the teachers after school or anything like that?
No, not really. I excelled in high school. I graduated with honors. All my teachers knew me. I never had a problem doing a presentation or staying after class if I needed help with something, that kind of thing. I'm actually friends with a few of my teachers on Facebook.
No way. They found you.
And so it was a completely different experience in high school.
What do you think was the main difference? Like, why didn't it carry over to college?
I went to a smaller university. It wasn't extremely small, but the population total was maybe like 13 or 14,000 students. And I think also I went to a PWI, a predominantly white institute. So,
Heard that in a while. Yeah.
I just think that
For college.
for college, yes. And so I just felt like there just wasn't a community, if that makes sense. I have more of a community in my social area. So like the people I lived with in the dorms, or I had jobs on campus. So those people, I was a part of social clubs. And so for me, I excelled in some of my courses because of those individuals, like my friends that I took classes with, or, someone's like, hey, I already took that class. Here's a textbook. Because after freshman year, we were no longer buying textbooks.
Oh, man. That is the hardest thing to swallow. The fact that I think every freshman does it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
I spent so much money on textbooks. And, after that, it's like, hey, we're taking the same class. Let's go half on this book. Or, it's pretty much similar to the previous semester. So here you go, that kind of thing.
What was the demographic of your high school?
My high school was predominantly Hispanic and African American.
So it was a bit of a culture shock too, I assume. Going to college?
Not really. I went to 2 high schools. So my first 2 years, I was at a school that was predominantly white. And then my 3rd and 4th year of high school, I was at a new school. And that's where it was.
That was a culture shock.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And not so much because the neighborhoods I lived in, I was around people that look like me. But what was a shock is switching to a high school that was different in regard to like funding and what they had access to and what we were able to do as students. Because I went in and I was like, well, how come you guys don't have this? Or do you guys do X, Y, and Z? That kind of thing, And we had to get creative with a lot of things. I was a part of student government as well. So that was a big difference to see those 2 different dynamics. But what I will say is that second high school that I ended up graduating from were some of the best times of my life. Awesome. Some of the friends that I made there, we're still friends to this day. Wow. And that it was actually a better experience than the predominantly white school that I went to that had more funding and more money, et cetera, et cetera. So
how so?
What created that difference is, if I think about it, the first school that I went to, they didn't congregate after school. It was kind of like my experience in college. They would come to class and they would go home unless you were in sports or cheerleading or something of the sort. Whereas the high school that I graduated from, there was always something going on, whether you're working on a float or, you were late to class and now so-and-so is helping you with your homework. Like there was just always things going on. Like I remember my friend and I, we would cook, and bring leftovers for lunch. And like our lunch was popping, like greens, mac and cheese, fried chicken, like just all of that. And so that was the difference.
That kind of segues to my next question. Let's take it all the way back from K through 12. What was your experience like?
It was interesting. I felt stressed as a kid. As a kid, yeah. I don't know what it was. I don't know what the disconnect was, but I did summer school several summers before high school. Yeah. I really struggled in elementary school. I don't know where it shifted, but things started to get better as I moved into middle school and high school.
Now that you're older, what do you think was that turning point between middle school and elementary school?
I think the pace of things slowed down a bit to where I was able to grasp the concepts better. Like we spent more time on certain things.
In middle school
and in high school, as opposed to elementary. I remember those timed tests, like to learn your multiplication to take like a spelling test or things of that nature.
Yeah.
And I just always felt stressed. And so, yeah, I think, and maybe that was just
from like what?
I don't know if it was just my perception, but I don't know. I just felt like I had more time to sit with a concept when I was in middle school and high school.
Was that middle school near your elementary school? Like, did most of the kids from the elementary school that you went to go to that middle school that you went to?
No.
So
we lived on like a different part of a different part of town.
So you had a whole new scenery and people.
For every stage of life, yes. I admire people that are like, oh, me and so-and-so went to elementary, middle, and high school together. And it's like, no, ma'am, that was not me. You know, I had a community when I was in elementary, another one when I was in middle school, and then another one, two actually, in high school, because I went to two high schools. I think home life played a huge role. My first 2 years of high school, I'm originally from Southern California, and in high school I was living in Northern California. And those first 2 years I was living with my grandparents. Without going into too many details, but there was a lot going on. And so it was kind of a space where I didn't necessarily want to be at home, but then I didn't want to be at school either.
Gotcha.
You know, but then the ironic thing is that my grades were great.
Really?
Yeah. They were great.
You kind of focused in on, you're like, well,
yeah,
I don't want to be here. I don't want to be there. Let me just dive into the work situation.
So there was that. Yeah.
Academically speaking, what like subjects did you like in that you were like, yeah, this is it? And what subjects you're like, oh, I cannot wait till this is over?
I would say English.
What was your favorite?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was good at writing. And even now, like, I never really thought of myself as a good writer, but I always did well. And even to this day, when I write things and I proofread it or whatever, I'm like, I did that.
That's
like,
great.
I wrote that, Yeah.
So what was the one that you were like, oh, I can't do that?
Math. I've always struggled with math, and I honestly think that's because there were gaps in the foundation. And I feel like certain subjects, if you don't grasp those concepts from, the baseline of elementary, you tend to play catch up. Yeah.
You say you're in your last year, junior year, senior year.
Mm-hmm.
Did you take the ACT or the SAT?
Both. I took both. I applied to a lot of schools, and some schools wanted the ACT. Some schools wanted the SAT. So I was like, well, let me just take both. That way, regardless of where I apply, I have something to submit.
Would you say college was always on your mind?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Yes. So I clearly remember I was in elementary. I don't remember what grade, but I know I wasn't in middle school yet. And we were driving and my mom was fussing at me because I don't know if I was struggling with something in school or whatever. And it was another year that I had to do summer school. And my brother was 5 years older. My brother was and still is a genius. Like, he got straight A's, never seen him study a day in his life. School just came naturally to him. And so she was fussing at me and was like, I needed to be more like my brother. And I clearly told her, I think I was like 8 or 9, no more than 10 years old. And I said, and my brother's name is Roberto. I said, you always talk about him. I said, but I'm going to be your college student. I'm the one that's going to college. I said this at like 9. And I will never forget that to this day. And so it wasn't something that was discussed at home. And so, but I was so angry. But I was like, I'm going to be your college student. And I was. My brother's very successful. He works in law enforcement, but he didn't go to college.
Wow.
And I was her college student.
Okay. So college was always on your mind since 9 years old.
Yeah.
And you took both the SAT and the ACT just in case. Was a particular college on your mind? Or university?
Not
or
really. No.
You're like,
I didn't know what I was going to study. I just knew I was going. And I was so upset with my mom moving us to Northern California that I was like, I'm coming back home. Like, I'm going to college in Southern California. So I had applied. I think I applied to like 10 schools, 11. And I got into like 8 or 9 out of those.
Wow, that's amazing.
And some of those were in Southern California. And I remember I came home one day, when you're a kid or a young adult, your parents are still opening your mail. And I came home and she had a offer letter from Long Beach State. She didn't know that I had applied to any schools in Southern California. And she was like, you think you slick?
You about to go?
This and that. And I was like, I can go where I want to go. I'm grown. She was like, no, you are not.
You were determined. Where did you end up? I'm sorry. Where did you end up going?
I ended up going to Cal State East Bay.
So you're in Cal East Bay. What was your hardest class?
My hardest class, I would say, was chemistry.
Which one? The general one?
Yes.
Asshole. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Because I really feel like, and I did okay in science in high school, but I also feel like depending on the high school you go to, the quality of education that you get will help you and set you up for college. At least those introductory classes and so on and so forth. And some classes I had to take, and I hate even using this term, and I don't even know if this term is still used, but I had to take remedial classes where like you have like you may have like college math or college algebra or whatever that first basic college class is. But if you don't test into that, like to say, that, okay, I understand enough to take this class, you have to take like a prerequisite to that class.
Oh, yeah.
But that prereq does not count towards graduation.
It's not a credit?
Yes and no.
Wow.
You
had
get
to pay for it?
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yes, I say yes and no because you get credit for it, but not towards the required classes for
sure.
For
it's
that.
Not like the core classes to grad, but you gotta pay for it and it doesn't count. What's like your learning style?
I would say I'm definitely a hands-on person.
Aesthetic.
Yeah.
I was
definitely
looking it up earlier when I first started the podcast, and that's like 10% of people, I think.
The hands-on? Yeah. And so you see how that's an issue, especially if you're in a school system that is not like that.
Yeah.
And I know it's a multi-layered situation, but it's just like,
but still,
you have all these different types of learners, but you're only teaching one style. I may not do well on an exam, but if you give me that same curriculum and tell me to write an essay or you tell me to create a project, I'm going to kill it every time.
Did you know that growing up? Like you like, oh, thank God it's a project, not a test.
I didn't know like the terms of like the different types of learners, but I did. Like I was always happy to have a project over a test. And now that we're talking about this, when I look back on my high school career, I think that's why I was killing it. Like I said, I graduated with honors because my classes were a mixture. So even if I didn't do well on maybe one or two tests that semester, I killed it in everything else. So I'm still coming out with an A. On
the flip side of Jen Kim, what was your easiest class?
So we were in this thing called clusters, right? So some of your, I think maybe they still call them general education classes, but you were in a cluster to where you would take those same classes with the same set of students. So I was in an ethnic studies cluster, and the university had it that way so that we could kind of build community and get to know people that were taking the same courses as us. So that was kind of cool.
That's kind of,
yeah. And it was just that first year, that freshman year.
What is some sort of loophole that you discovered in college? For example, last year I had a micro class that I had to take in the fall, but the prereq was cell biology.
Okay.
Which was also in the fall.
Okay.
And micro is only in the fall.
Okay.
And then I'm like, I'll take it at another school.
No, I did know of students who would take those general ed classes like at a junior college in the summertime if they weren't at the university.
Wow.
Because, like I said, you have your math, your science, and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, okay, I'll take some of these during the semester, but summertime, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to go home and I'm going to go to a junior college and take some of these courses for a fraction of the price. I never did that, but
that part.
Yeah, I would say for me, the loophole, which I guess is not really a loophole, but the whole textbook situation.
Yeah, it is.
Like I said, we swapped books. We would even, like, if we knew, like, hey, we both have to take this class, let's take it this semester together. and we can split this book, and we can we would share the book. So like, say I have we're taking the same class, but maybe I have so and so professor Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you have that person Tuesday and Thursday. Okay, well we're gonna swap this book.
That's smart.
Yeah.
One of my last questions.
Okay.
With everything that we've said now, looking back, what would you tell younger Summer?
What would I tell younger Summer?
What advice would you give her?
I would tell her to relax. I would tell her to relax and know that it's okay to not have everything figured out. Because you have those people who run out of high school, they know exactly what they're gonna do. They have one major, but yeah, it's okay to not have things figured out. You know, a spoil alert. Nobody does.
That's real.
Nobody has it all together, because life is a learning curve, and you're always gonna have new challenges and new obstacles and new victories to go through.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the title of the episode.
What?
Relax.
Yeah. I think I look back and I had a great time in high school. I had a great time in college. But I think if I was not so in my head, I probably could have, built better relationships, or, had a better time in college academically, that kind of thing. Because when I look back at college, like, there are some things that I've learned. Like I said, all the life lessons and all the relationships that I built outside of class. And the last thing I want to say is that those relationships, they continue to flourish, and they have been a blessing to my life. The people that I was friends with, that I'm still friends with, we've grown up to be entrepreneurs, healthcare workers, social workers, and we pour into each other. That has been the biggest blessing out of my college experience, is I get to continue to do life with these people. Wow. And they continue to. Now we're some of us are married with children, and instead of talking about what we're wearing and what club we're going to, we're talking about interest rates and mortgages, and hey, I'm getting ready to invest in this property, or what do you think about this, or those kind of things. And so yeah, they're awesome, and we get, like I said, we get to do life together. So yeah,
that's beautiful. Beautifully said. There's a little section for shameless plug. Mm-hmm. So if you just let everyone know,
yes,
what's coming up next.
Indeed, if you know me, I have no shame. So although my background is healthcare, I am an entrepreneur, and I recently started a styling business during the panorama, the pandemic. And it is Bold Melody, and it is a styling service, and I am a wardrobe consultant. You can find me on social media at bold.melody on Instagram, and All Things Natural on Instagram.
Go peep that for sure.
Yes, indeed. Oh, also, I want to say, people think that fashion and clothing is just for a certain individual or a certain industry, but unfortunately, the society that we live in, image matters. So no matter what industry you're in, you want to show up as your best and highest self. And if you need help with that, I am more than willing to help.
And before I leave you all today, research your own experiences, absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. Bruce Lee. God bless.
Yes.